Neville Goddard, The Law and the Promise, Chapter 13, All Trivia. General knowledge is remote knowledge. It is in particulars that wisdom consists, and happiness too. Blake. Wow. There's a reason that Neville uses Blake a lot. And I like that he's using him more in his latter works here. We must use our imagination to achieve particular ends, even if the ends are all trivia. Because men do not clearly define and imagine particular ends, the results are uncertain, while they may be perfectly certain. To imagine particular ends is to discriminate clearly. Remember, particular ends. How do we distinguish the oak from the beech, the horse from the ox, but by the bounding outline? Definition asserts the reality of the particular thing against the formless generalizations which flood the mind. Life on earth is a kindergarten for image making. That was very much a thing that Seth conveyed in his body of work too, that this was basically that our system of reality, this system, is like a training ground. It's basically like a grade school, that when we graduate, we are going to, which in Neville's terms, which is great, is the resurrection. And in Neville's terms of his own life, he was meeting with the resurrection, which means he wasn't going to be coming back as a 20-year-old like his parents, but was going to be going home and possibly onto the next system or the next situation, which makes this like the training ground, makes this the kindergarten. And Seth has communicated that quite clearly in his body of work. And here it is, Neville right here saying the same thing. Life on earth is a kindergarten for image making. Image making. The bigness or littleness of the object is to be created. The bigness or littleness of the object to be created is not in itself important. The great and golden rule of art as well as life, said Blake, is this: that the more distinct, sharp, and wiry the bounding line, the more perfect the work of art, and the less keen and sharp, the greater is the evidence of weak imitation. What is it that builds a house and plants a garden but the definite and determinate? Leave out this line and you leave out life itself. Wow, I can't wait to read Blake. The following stories are concerned with the acquiring of seemingly little things, or toys, as I call them, but they are important because of the clear imaginal images that created the toys. The author of the first story is one of whom it is said, she has everything. This is true. She has financial, social, and intellectual security. She writes, as you know, through your teaching and through my practice of that teaching, I have completely changed myself and my life. 2 weeks ago, when you spoke of toys, I realized I had never used my imagination for the getting of things, and I decided it would be fun to try it. You told of a young woman who was given a hat by merely wearing that hat in her imagination. The last thing on earth I needed was a hat. But I wanted to test my imagination for this getting of things. Oh, let's be patient. The last thing on earth I needed was a hat, but I wanted to test my imagination for this getting of things. So I selected a hat pictured in a fashion magazine. I cut the picture out and stuck it on the mirror of my dressing table. I studied the picture carefully. Then I shut my eyes, and in my imagination, I put that hat on my head and wore it as I walked out of the house. I did this just once. The following week, I met some friends for luncheon, and one of them was wearing the hat. We all admired it. The very next day, I received a parcel by special delivery messenger. The hat was in the parcel. The friend who had worn it the day before had sent the hat to me with a note saying she did not particularly care for the hat and didn't know why she had bought it in the first place. Where do these motivations come from? You don't know where and why spontaneity knows its own order. And this was the main communication of Seth, by the way. Spontaneity knows its own order. The quickest way to know who you are and know about your desire, what's in you, is just to be spontaneous. Just to be spontaneously yourself. That's the fastest way to get in line with your own desire. Spontaneity knows its own order. And as this lady said, she didn't know why she bought the hat in the first place. There was some kind of spontaneity involved and some kind of motivation. Where did that come from? Well, our friend here saw herself, imagined herself wearing it. One good turn deserves another. The friend who had worn it the day before had sent the hat to me with a note saying she did not particularly care for the hat and didn't know why she had bought it in the first place. But for some reason, she thought it would look well on me and would I please accept it? Signed GL. I tell you. Movement from dreams to things is the power driving humanity. We must live wholly on the level of imagination, and it must be consciously and deliberately undertaken. Hear ye, hear ye. Absolutely. Okay. All my life I have loved birds. I enjoy watching them, hearing their chatter, feeding them, and I am particularly fond of the small sparrow. For many months I have fed them crumbs of morning bread, wild birdseed, and anything I believed they would eat. And for all those months I have been frustrated as I watched the larger birds, particularly the pigeons, command the area, gobbling up most of the good seed and leaving the husks for my sparrows. To use my imagination on this problem seemed facetious to me at first, but the more I thought of it, the more interesting the idea became. So one night I set about seeing the little birds come in for their full share of daily offerings, and I would tell my wife that the pigeons no longer interfered with my sparrows, but took their share like gentlemen and left the area. I continued this imaginary action for almost 1 month. 1 month. 4 1/3 weeks on the calendar, 1 month. Are you willing to spend this much time on something seemingly facetious here? Are you willing to try it? Try it on something innocuous. Try it on something that doesn't even seem to have the impact on yours or someone else's life. Try it on the birds. Try it on your cat scratching what it shouldn't be scratching. I continued this imaginary action for almost 1 month. Then one morning I noticed that the pigeons had disappeared. The sparrows had breakfast all to themselves for a few days. For those few days, no larger bird entered the area. They did return eventually, but to this day, they have never again infringed on the area occupied by my sparrows. They stay together, eating what I put out for them, leaving a full share of the area to my tiny friends. And do you know, I actually believe the sparrows understand. They no longer seem to be afraid when I walk among them. Signed RK. That is amazing. This lady proves that unless our heart is in the task, unless we imagine ourselves right into the feeling of our wish fulfilled, we are not there. We are not there yet. For we are all imagination and must be where and what we are in imagination. If we could, and I know it's not practical in the least bit. I mean, in college, we used to do tests. We used to do experiments like this in speech class. That was a heck of a fun class, man. Any of those speech classes are fun. If you want a recommendation from me and you're going to city college or state college and you want to decide what to major in, I highly recommend communications. If you had the teachers I had, they were fun. But we would do things like that. Cover your eyes and go out and, like you're blind, and try and make go around campus and try and see what you could figure out. I mean, but back to the idea, if you could walk around literally with your eyes closed and covered up and be blind for a day, and all you had was imagination, boy, oh boy, oh boy, would you use these differently? Would you use these differently? You would use this differently. I mean, massive, massive difference in your touch, in your smell, and in your hearing would probably ramp up by 100%. Because it would be quite scary if you consider if you didn't have somebody guiding you, for instance, what you would be faced with. I mean, really, if you were on a city street or on a city block, I mean, walking among some shops, you don't even know what would happen next, what you would trip over. I mean, this could be really profound, but it would sure sharpen for that small amount of time before you did go down. Just playing. These would go crazy trying to figure things out. This would go crazy. Any slight change would drive this, would really tell you something. You'd be imagining, what's that? And you'd be like, okay, now I can sense what's going on here. And then hopefully for the safety of your life, you'd be holding on to something and trying to feel your way through. Where's the tree going to be? Where's the bench? Where's the store, the shop, the door, a person? I mean, it's quite an idea what is going on in your imagination when these are actually closed. A lot more is going on. Consider when you wake up until you go to sleep. If you don't take naps like I do, every day you should take a nap. If you don't take naps and you wake up and you go to sleep, how much of your time, effort, and energy is focused on looking with these? I mean, think about that question. How much of your day and the effort of that day is focused on these things and what these are delivering you instead of this, instead of the imagination? With the eyes is your whole day, not through the eyes. Through the eyes is more of a contemplative, pensive, I see that person better, etc., etc. So you see how much these guys are robbing you in your day, just one day. And you don't stop from when you wake up and come alive until all the way when you go back to sleep. I mean, it's a consistent, the beat goes on, right? I mean, all the livelong day. In early February, my husband and I had been in our new house 1 month. A home lovely beyond telling, perched on a rugged cliff with the ocean for our front yard. Wind and sky for neighbors and seagulls for guests. We were ecstatic. If you have experienced the joy and woe of building your own home, you know how completely filled with happiness you are and how completely empty your purse is. 100 lovely things clamored to be bought for that house. But the one thing we wanted most of all was the most useless, a picture. Not just any picture, but a wild, wonderful scene of the sea dominated by a great white clipper ship. This picture had been in our thoughts all the months of building, and we left one living room wall free of paneling to hold it. My husband mounted decorative red and green ship lanterns on the wall to frame our picture. But the picture itself would have to wait. Draperies, carpeting, all the practical items must come first. Perhaps so, but that didn't stop either one of us from seeing that picture in our imagination on that wall. One day while shopping, I strolled into a small art gallery, and as I walked through the door, I stopped so suddenly, a gentleman walking behind me crashed into an easel. I apologized and pointed to a painting hanging at head height across the room. That's what did it. I've never seen anything so wonderful. He introduced himself as the owner of the gallery and said, yes, an original by the greatest English painter of clipper ships the world has known. He went on to tell me about the artist, but I wasn't listening. I could not take my eyes from that wonderful ship, and suddenly I experienced a very strange thing. It was only a moment in time, but the art gallery faded, and I saw that picture on my wall. Think about that. Have you ever wanted something so much, you transferred the situation to be the next situation? I've done that. I for sure have done that. I'm afraid the owner thought me a little giddy, and I was. But I finally managed to return my attention to his voice when he mentioned an astronomical price. I smiled and said, perhaps someday. He continued to tell me about the painter and also about an American artist who was the only living lithographer capable of copying the great English master. He said, if you're very lucky, you may pick up one of his prints. I've seen his work. It's perfect down to the last detail. Many people prefer prints to paintings. Prints or paintings. I knew nothing about the values of either, and anyway, all I wanted was that scene. When my husband returned home that evening, I talked of nothing but that painting and pleaded with him to visit the gallery and see it. Maybe we could find a print of it somewhere. The man said, yes. He interrupted, but you know, we can't afford any picture now. Our conversation ended there, but that night after dinner, I stood in our living room and saw that picture on our wall. The next day, my husband had an appointment with a client which he did not want to keep, but the appointment was kept, and my husband did not return home until after dark. When he walked through the front door, I was busy in another part of the house and called a greeting to him. A few minutes later, I heard hammering and walked into the living room to see what he was doing. On our wall hung my picture. In my first moment of intense joy, I remembered the man in the art gallery saying, if you're very lucky, you may pick up one of his prints. Lucky? Well, here's my husband's part of this story. Making the call already mentioned, he entered one of the poorest, meanest little houses he had ever been in. The client introduced himself and led my husband into a tiny, dark dining area where the two of them sat down at a bare table. As my husband put his briefcase on the tabletop, he looked up and saw the picture on a wall. He confessed to me he had conducted a very sloppy interview because he couldn't take his eyes from that picture. The client signed the contract and gave a check as down payment, which, as my husband believed at the time, was $10 short. Mentioning this fact to the client, he said the check given was every cent he could afford, but added, I've noticed your interest in that picture. It was here when I took this place. I don't know to whom it belonged, but I don't want it. If you put the $10 in for me, I'll give you the picture. When my husband returned to his company's main office, he learned he had been in error about the amount. He was not charged $10. Our picture is on our wall, and it cost us nothing. Signed AA. Wow. Just magic. After this happens to you, you're going to claim all kinds of miracles. It's just, I can't believe how this stuff comes together. Who, how, why, what pushes what buttons? What motivates somebody? You just don't have to care. You really don't have to care. Once this pump is primed and you're going down this road and you're consciously manifesting exactly what you want, just like these people in this book, by spending a month, 2 months, 3 months, what does it take? How long did it take you to get where you are now? How many years did you put yourself in that pickle? If it's a pickle, if it's full of limitation, if you have a desire to do something or be something or have something else. If that's the pickle, it took you a while to get there. So we don't have to undo it. We just have to change what you're doing. You don't have to undo what got you here. You have to just redo what you want. You have to just make the impression of what you want. What do you want to objectify? It's just change the direction. What a wonderful story. I mean, so simple. Of R.L., who writes the following letter, it must be said, in faith, lady, you have a merry heart. One day during a bus strike, I needed to go into the downtown area and had to walk 10 blocks from my home to the nearest bus in operation. Before starting home, I recalled there was no food market on this new route, and I wouldn't be able to shop for dinner. I had enough to manage a potluck meal, but I would need bread. After shopping all day, the 10 blocks back from the bus line was all I could manage, and to go still farther to shop for bread was out of question. I stood very still for a moment and allowed a vision of bread to dance in my head. Then I started for home. When I boarded the bus, I was so tired, I grabbed the first available seat and almost sat on a paper bag. Now, on a crowded bus, tired passengers rarely look directly at one another. So being naturally curious, I peeked into the bag. Of course, it was a loaf of bread. Not just any bread, but the very same bread I always buy. Signed R.L. I tell you, gifts, they just fall into your lap or under your bum. If you're not careful, just get up. I mean, not careful where you sit. You could sit on what you're looking for. And on the other side of that coin, you could also just look right under yourself. And there it is, what you were looking for. Trifles, all trifles, but they produced their trivia without price. Imagining accomplished these things without the means generally reputed necessary to do so. Man rates wealth in a way that bears no relation to real values. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Isaiah 55:1. Oh, the wonders of it all. I was watching a trailer for some movie, and I'm just trying to find the name of it. And these guys, the common stars of the time, I'm going to guess 90-something, 1990. What year would that movie be? 90-something, I think, maybe. 96 or something like this, I think. These three guys find an airplane crash, and it's a Bill Paxton movie. That's what I remember. And Billy Bob Thornton, I believe, and another guy. And they find a plane wreck with a big bag of money. I don't know, it's a lot of money. I don't know what it is, millions or a million, whatever it is. And they're so excited, and then they get involved with hiding the money. Then, just watching the trailer, you can see what's going to unfold as your typical movie where you find the treasure. You find a big bag of money, or the money falls off the truck, like the John Cusack movie. So they go through a lot of drama, and you can tell what's going to happen. And I wasn't even listening to the trailer. I just saw it. And it dawned on me that what we're doing here together is we have found the treasure. In those gentlemen's discovery of the money, they think all their answers have been, all their problems have been answered. All their problems are going to go away because there's this thing out here that they've discovered that could be the answer, could be the actual solution to their immediate problems. That's in their mind what is answering that call, that strife, that hunger. Remember, we're always hungry. So they go through a lot of drama. There's an FBI guy involved. The FBI guy I noticed was the guy from Office Space. Yeah, we're going to need you to come in on Saturday. That guy. He's the FBI guy. I noticed that in the trailer. But a lot of drama unfolds, and you can tell it's going to all come back to home. It's like a typical story. There's going to be a return without the money, obviously. I didn't even have to watch anymore, but to realize that in that illusion that they were in that illusion that something out there was where the treasure was. This all dawned on me when I was watching that trailer today. And, again, where's the treasure? So they were so busy pointing out there, it dawned on me what we're doing here together, and what we're discussing, and what we're breaking down, and what we're unpacking, and what we're unfolding, and what we're realizing, and what we're doing when we start practicing how to use the law, is we're really peeling layer by layer and exposing that treasure that is within. That treasure is one that will answer all of your prayers. Every single one you could possibly dream up. Every one you've had, every one you will ever have, including every single one you have now. It was a very powerful moment, and it's very, very true. Once you start using the law, and you start to see it work, and you start to put it into use, you start to understand that the treasure's always been here. It's never been out there. So we've been given the treasure in the first place. I and my Father are one. My Father is greater than I. The dreamer and the dream are one. The dreamer is greater than the dream. The conceiver and the conception are one. The conceiver is greater than the conception. We're the conception, we're the dreamer, we're the creator. We go from the created to the creator. And if you can imagine, for fun of it, these things sprouting up everywhere on this board, these images here. You then, when you have an idea, you become a creator of that idea. You have an idea you want to be married. You become a creator of that idea, and then all these possibilities are open to you because you have infinite choice. You can go any direction you want in any moment. You can trust the spontaneity of your being and become anything you want to become. So you go from the created to the creator. And so then you spawn another one of these just by having ideas. So you can see my point, back to the original idea here. These guys thought they had the answer out there that was going to solve the problem in here. The in here problem was one where they thought they were full of limitation, when in actuality they were not full of limitation. That was an illusion. They got involved in a lot of drama over that concept of that illusion. So get with it. Get with each night, going to bed, using your imagination, and making the impression. If it takes a month, okay. What's it worth to you? If it takes 3 months, okay. What's that worth? I told you about my cruise idea. I started somewhere in March. I think I did it for no more than a couple months. I mean, honestly, maybe even 6 weeks. But then over the next month or two, I did it spotty. And then that was March of 23 for the cruise. I just went on in August of 24. It's in a few videos ago. The idea was, what I'm trying to convey here is that was extremely highly motivating to my wife, who then was motivated to buy the cruise. Then the cruise was purchased and planned. Then it took another year for the plan and vacation and all these other logistics to come together. And then we finally went on the trip. But that whole beginning part was just, and I just was going to sleep thinking about that cruise, thinking about being on it, being handed that glass, being handed this exact glass. Now, I did not own this glass at the time of the imagining. I bought this glass when I got home because and I'll show you a picture somehow. Somehow I'm going to show you a picture of the glass on the table at the restaurant above the Fairmont Hotel at the Hairpin in Monaco. It was this glass in my imagining every time I imagined it. And there was a lime and it was soda water with ice and I would drink it and it was wonderful. Each time I imagined that scene. I'm going to do a breakdown on this imagining later, but it didn't take but a month and a half, 6 weeks. If I say 6 to 12 weeks, I'm going to be generous. But I wasn't obsessed. I just did it over and over. So much time went by. Time's going to go by anyway. What do you have to lose? Time's going by. The illusion of time is going by. Anyway, so what's a month? What's 6 weeks? What's 12 weeks? 3 months. If it took you 6 months to get your world's greatest desire and dream manifested for yourself, would you do it for 6 months? If you knew for sure that going to sleep every night with the dream image in mind and becoming alive in that dream image, feeling it real over 6 months would get you exactly what you're after, would you do it for 6 months? And then once you see the success, you know you can do it in 3 months. Then you know you can do it in 6 weeks. Then you know 4 weeks. Then you know 2 weeks. Then you know 1 week. Then you know, wait, I can think of this when I'm driving. It's going to get quicker and quicker and quicker once you see it come to fruition. And it becomes a skill set. And that's why we're talking right now to each other. This is going to become a skill set you put into use. This is called the law. It is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and you will become good at it. I promise you. Just keep on keeping on. All right, that was the end of that chapter. What a great chapter. Was there an opening quote? Because there's so much. The closing quote, come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Boy, in my early beginnings with Neville, I've been at it 3 years, like I said, but in my early beginnings, that quote, I was like, how, what? Even still, opening quote. General knowledge is remote knowledge. It is in particulars that wisdom consists and happiness too. Wow. Blake. Oh my gosh. We must live wholly on the level of imagination, and it must be consciously and deliberately undertaken. Come by wine and milk without money and without price. End of chapter. Okay, we're going to see you in the next one.